Well, g'day, Joe. This month, we're focusing on women in leadership across the network. And I wanted to talk about your role. I wanted to talk about you joining the Reach Australia team recently. You've come on to do a whole bunch of stuff. But I just want to ask a question, why now in the life of Reach Australia? We're 13 years old, we've seen lots of church planting happening. We've seen us push into working with established churches to see them become healthy, evangelistic and multiplying. Why now?
Yeah, great question, Scott. As part of the network, we've had teams involved in what the network's doing. At conference, we've got teams coming along every year, developing resources for teams. But what's really exciting is that now the network has the capacity to think specifically into that area of staff teams, and not just the senior pastor, but how staff teams really support the senior pastor in his role of leading and making effective and healthy teams.
Yeah, so someone looking on from the outside might say the focus has been particularly on the church planter and the church planting couple at the cost of the team. Potentially I might say that. Hopefully you say no. And when they look at the Reach Australia Development Program, you go, that's primarily for the senior leader.
Yeah. And I'm totally on board with that because really the senior leader has the strongest influence in making a healthy, evangelistic, multiplying church. So I think it's great that we have that particular focus. But now we have the bandwidth as a network to be thinking, how can the staff team be supporting the senior pastor in their role? Because it seems unfair to say that one guy leading the church is able to do all of that, to be able to get everyone excited about where they're heading as a church, to think about change management, to be introducing new organisational structures if that's needed, but to actually have a whole team supporting the senior pastor in doing that, all bringing their gifts, their different perspectives to bear on that. We're going to see bigger impact. Yeah,
and I think that's something that we've always focused on, even in the church planting days with the church planter and, often the picture of the alpha leader. The focus was always, no, you need to start building high capacity leaders who can work alongside you, but you also need to bring that team's mentality. So it's been part of the framework, take responsibility, give responsibility, and it's a key outcome that we want to see in the life of the church in terms of serving others.
Yeah. And could I say, it's hard work to build that healthy team. It actually takes a lot of intentionality, but also good resources, good support to be able to do that well. So for us to be able to, as a network, to help senior pastors do that, it's great.
So this sounds like a big role. What are you actually going to be doing at Reach Australia?
So I'm involved kind of across all the different Reach Australia programs. I'm one of the consultants on the team, but particularly pushing into that healthy team space. So what makes a healthy functioning team? Because healthy churches need healthy teams. But also specifically within that, looking at men and women serving on teams together and how we do that well theologically, but also practically what that looks like in an organisation to, really lean into that.
So you've only been with the team since mid-January, but you were kind of working with the team before you were working with the team. What have you been doing, so far? Where have you, seen pastors reaching out to you for, wisdom, advice, coaching?
Yeah, I've been joking it's nice to be paid now for things I've done for fun.
Yep.
But yeah, great in terms of having input into the Reach Australia Development Program with senior pastors, having some input into that, talking about healthy teams and seeing senior pastors really engage with that. But also last year's national conference doing a workshop on mobilising women. That was fantastic. We had about 300 people come along to that, multiple people from the same staff team or the same church. Great conversation, really positive in that workshop. But also the follow-on conversations where people have gone back to their churches, they've listened to the workshop or they've thought about the different stages that we talked through and are implementing that and coming back and saying how much of a difference it's made. So, yeah, some really great things happening.
Now, Joe, you've got extensive ministry experience, not only here in Australia, leading significant ministries in small, medium, large-sized churches, but also cross-cultural ministry experience as well. What frustrates you at the moment about the church landscape and women?
Oh yeah, I think it's mostly missed opportunities.
Mm.
So I think regularly I'm hearing lack of theological clarity around men and women, and I really get it. It's hard work for the senior pastor to be developing a theological framework, having that discussion. But where there's that lack of clarity, women they're not clear on what they're able to do in ministry, and so they're less likely to kind of press in or step up into leadership. And that lack of clarity means that the whole church is really not able to engage in terms of men and women across the whole range of church programs. It often becomes we'll do a theological framework, but it'll be what women can't do, which is not very inspiring for anyone in leadership, rather than what does the biblical vision look like for men and women across all of our programs? And what does it speak into in terms of the theology of church, our understanding of what leadership is? It's a really great conversation, but I think we're missing that opportunity. But where frustrations as well, I think I hear a lot about just not great organisational health stuff. About team dynamics, around one-to-one conversations with direct reports. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's just not landing very well for women because we're not intentional. We're not putting in the time to think about that organisational health stuff. And so I think it ends up being frustrating for women on teams, but I think it ends up impacting on our gospel effectiveness. Because you've got often women on teams where their gifts are not being fully used, where all of the gifts and perspectives of the team are not feeding into the best outcome, where you're not having that good foundation of trust in teams that then builds to effectiveness towards the same outcome. So, yeah, I think it's frustrating for people in teams, but also just frustrating for gospel ministry.
Yeah, which really helpful to hear you say we're actually not achieving that bigger, larger outcome of making mature disciples in increasing number.
Yeah.
The impact of it being that we're actually not seeing a whole bunch of women, being mobilised in ministry across church life, but even more so across just the whole of church as well. We're not seeing healthy teams in a whole bunch of different places.
Yeah, and then I have conversations with younger women who are looking ahead and saying, is it worthwhile doing theological study? Is there going to be a role for me at the end of this? I can't see what my pathway would be. There's not necessarily intentional pipelines around developing women in leadership. So the church is losing out. But yeah, I just think there's so much that we could be doing in this space.
Yeah, so it's really helpful seeing the fallout and seeing its impact on the larger outcome. Probably the busy pastors listening in thinking, it's great Jo's thinking about this, great Reach Australia's wanting to see healthy teams, but that's just another thing I've got to add to my already full calendar.
Yep.
I'm already feeling burdened by, denominational hierarchy, preaching next week, a whole bunch of people who are coming at me for whatever.
Yeah, and the diary of the senior pastor is full. I totally get it. And we don't want to be adding more and more onto that. But you were saying to me today, it's also the responsibility of the senior leader. There's so much they can do in this space that will actually help their ministry long term with a really engaged team who are really on board or using their gifts. That's actually going to make their job easier. But this is where we come in as a network so that we can provide help with theological frameworks, with practical tools and with support so that we can actually help senior pastors and their teams think through practical questions about how this lands, how this is implemented as we've thought theologically, that we can help in that space so we can value add, we can make your job a little bit easier. And there's a few things we're going to be doing. So, for example, at Reach Australia National Conference this year, the Foundations program on a Monday, we've got a new Stream 3, which is all about men and women in ministry, model Bible talk from Andrew Hurd. We're going to be hearing from some teams who are doing really great work in this space. So all to give you, the senior pastor and their teams, ideas, practical resources to make their job easier.
And I think this is one of the issues. A lot of pastors, you talk about the importance of clarity. Pastors have to do the work themselves. They have to have the conversations with their church communities. With women and male leaders in significant, leadership in their church. But often, it's much more helpful to kind of see what's happening over here, pick and grab and go, okay, we're not that, we're this. So we're hoping that Stream 3 of the Foundations is an opportunity to have that conversation as a network and come out with some really concrete and practical things to help you as a leader actually go back and, start to work this out. What else? So, Jo, what else is in the works?
What's really exciting is the second half of this year, we're running a pilot for a development program for team members. And we're going to come up with a better name than that. But it's a development program that will be for staff team members. So similar in a lot of the content to the one that we run for senior pastors, but thinking what are the specific challenges for people on staff teams, but also how can they understand the principles that we're talking about, the ecosystem, so that they can actually be working with the senior pastor and helping them implement that. We'll also be looking at specific leadership development for people on staff teams. So it's really exciting. That's in the works, but we're scheming and dreaming about it at the moment, and people will hear more. One
of the health things I've just seen you already do in the last few months is just by alerting our team and the wider network to this issue. There's been just a whole bunch of really healthy and good conversations. Because I think a lot of leaders are not confident to talk to speak into this space, and often it's issues and problems with themselves. And so just by having the conversation, we're highlighting, I'm actually not great at just leading my team generally, let alone leading the 2 or 3 women that I've got the responsibility of leading as well.
And often the questions that senior pastors have are the same questions that others do. So we want to be that really supportive space where people can come and ask their very practical questions, but also hear what we've been learning within the network, what other people have been learning in their churches, so that we can all share our ideas, our resources, and be able to do that well together.
Can you tell us a story? Give us a highlight recently just of some of the interactions in the network.
I've had really great conversations with people after the workshop that we ran at National Conference last year, of teams where a few people from the team came along to the workshop, often the senior pastor, a woman on the team, sometimes the elders in a church, listened to what we talked about, how to mobilise women, and then went back and started doing that. So started having conversations where they got together women in the church, talked about what their blockages were to serving in church, what some of the challenges were, but then also had a really good conversation around theologically where they land on men's and women's roles, an ongoing conversation about how that's applied to church. And then they looked across what was happening in church and just did that really simple analysis of, where are men and women represented, underrepresented, and started putting in place strategies to change that. So this great open conversation, I just hear a real positivity towards this issue. People are just really wanting to have healthy teams, see everyone firing on all cylinders. And so, I'm just seeing this in lots of different places across Australia in our network. Yeah, it's been really exciting.
Well, Jo, it is great having you on the team. You're one of those team members who's always, raising, sending the message, raising things so we can be better. And we as a network believe that we are better together. And so we want to keep hearing these stories of what are happening in churches across the network, small, medium and large, because by sharing those stories and actually talking about this more, we can be better. Already last year, great hearing, teams coming back from the conference and actually leaning into the hard conversations, what's actually not working here, because actually we want to get better at this so that we can see more people reached, and so we can see people grow in their knowledge and their love of Jesus. Well, Jo, it has been great having you on the team. You're one of those team members who's always come up with a new idea, niggling for change, but unafraid to have that conversation, positive and negative, and that's what we want to see in churches. That's what we want to see across the network. Already, you've started to elevate that conversation about healthy teams, and that's what we want to see. If we're going to reach Australia, we actually need teams that are firing, and we need the body of Christ to be mobilised. So if you have got a question around healthy teams, if you want Jo to come and ask the hard questions of your team like she asks of our team, then head over to reachaustralia.com.au, jump on the Contact Us page and reach out, and we'll aim to get back to you as soon as possible. But probably the best place to have these conversations as a network is actually at our Reach Australia National Conference. This year, it's all about us as a network. We're going to be thinking into the in-community outcome area, but particularly we're also thinking about what does it look like for us as a network to strengthen each other and actually see this great vision of thousands of healthy, evangelistic, multiplying churches. So head along to the conference. Jo's going to be there. I'll be there, and we're always happy for you to reach out and keep prompting us to better serve the network.